Larry tried to kill me.
Yeah. I was so thoroughly disgusted.
I mean, think about it. Why does it make you special to do what you do?
Packers jumping around. They rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run. Inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line. My goodness.
Rushing forward, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
There's also Brian Clady and Bob Miller. Third and long 3. Going deep. Oh, and he's got Thomas. Goodbye. Touchdown.
Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him 3 to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first play of overtime.
This episode of the 5280 podcast is not sponsored by Mountain Dew. Yet.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
What's
dude.
up, everybody? Welcome to the 5280 podcast. We've got a lot of special guests in today, covering a lot of avenues. Obviously, myself and Cameron Parker, originals of the 5280. We've got Ty, who joins us from the Incomplete podcast. And everybody knows my favorite host on the network.
Oh, get off my lawn!
It's Bill from Broncos Breakdown. Yes.
Oh god.
I
You know
had to
what's bad about that?
Just to add that video.
What's bad about that is it looks kind of like me. That's what's scary.
Right? That's what I got it for.
Good God.
Well, obviously, I put out a tweet earlier today. Was like, no, we're not going to have the show. We've got stuff to do. And then the Broncos saw it, and they were like, no, we got to make
How the
sure we have
turntables?
a 50 podcast. So we're going to let everybody know that we're bringing in Sean Payton as the next head coach of the Denver Broncos. And I sound excited because I am excited, but I'm also not excited. But I am excited. I'm high on Mountain Dew. How are you guys feeling? Ty, Sean Payton's the head coach. What do you think?
Enough said.
I'm skeptical. I'll be probably the first to say I'm skeptical about it. Let's see. Just because of his past history, kind of with like Bountygate, and then how he kind of left the Saints was like, oh, like, is this someone that we want to lead? But also think of it this way. We were so excited when we got Russell Wilson, and look how that season turned out. So I'm lowering expectations this time until I can see winning on the field.
I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. And I'll tell you why I don't like it. Main reason is I don't trust this guy. I don't trust him at all. And Ty, you mentioned it right off the top. You got Bountygate, and I know maybe it wasn't all just him. That it was his coaches and things of that nature. But he's a head coach. He's the one that takes responsibility. Okay.
Yep.
The second thing is, what's to say? What's to say, guy? He had an easy gig on Fox. What's to say that that things go south and things go sour, and Russell Wilson, they got headbutts, and maybe he has headbutting, Greg Penner, and all of a sudden he just goes, you know what? Screw this. See ya. I'm going back to Fox. Why? If he did it once in New Orleans, why wouldn't he do it in Denver? That's the problem I have with him.
Right there. Bill doesn't like Peyton because he can't rock the visor like he can. Yes. Myself and Cam were on the 5280 podcast. You've got Cam, who's got mainly Broncos, You've got Ty, who's got the Incomplete podcast, and you've got Bill, who's got Broncos Breakdown with Bronco Bill. We all have our own channels. Right now, we're on the network, though, which will soon be sponsored by Mountain Dew. I got to turn the label the right way. There we go.
And he was saying like how, oh my gosh, this Mountain Dew tastes so good. Like,
Yeah.
I give it about maybe 6
delicious.
to 12 months before you have a Mountain Dew sponsorship.
I
I
hope
don't know,
so.
Cam. What do you think?
You know, I love it. I mean, you know, when you have an ownership group that was sticking to their word, and fulfilling their word of swinging big, they came to fruition. And I think that is why ultimately, when it boiled down to it, the top two candidates that were, you know, on their board as far as swing big candidates were Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton. And both of them, even at the beginning point of this process, for probably a handful of people on Broncos Twitter and, you know, anywhere, probably felt like it was a long shot. And so if you miss on one long shot, you might as well take another swing on potentially another long shot, and that ended up being Sean Payton. Now, I think there's a few other takeaways, obviously, with this. You know, I mean, one, it seems really quarterback friendly when you have the idea that Sean Payton is coming to the Broncos, and you know, and he's had that kind of Hall of Fame quarterback before, and I think people do kind of forget that, you know, that Drew Brees was a good quarterback with the San Diego Chargers at the time, and then he and then he really transformed Brees into that Hall of Fame quarterback that we saw now. You know, and the other thing too is he's really big on offensive line development, which has been a big deal here, you know, for the Denver Broncos. And so when you have the possibility of the way he can build a staff, and especially when, you know, we're talking about you know, the Walmart money, we're talking about a front office and an ownership that is going to give him every single resource available to do what he needs to in Denver. And I think people are always going to be attached to Russell Wilson, and people will probably know that I've been pretty pro Russ, but I will say that, you know, this isn't just a pro Russ move. This is also a current Russell Wilson move and a past Russell Wilson move. So this will be good for the team in the long run. And I know we'll certainly talk about it, but I've also I've been in the camp that I don't know if I would have traded draft picks for him, but at this end of the day, it's not my decision. And at the end of the day, a head coach is one of the most important foundational pillar pieces you can ever make with a franchise, next to ownership, head coach, front office, and quarterback. And
Right.
At the end of the day, head coach is, you know, one of the most, again, so head coach over draft picks any day of the week. And as it turned out, the Broncos kind of got a pretty good deal there. Both parties got a good deal in the grand scheme of things when you look at the deal.
So if I'm picking up what you're putting down, it's that Sean Payton is not going to bring Butch Berry back as the offensive line coach.
Unfortunately not.
Okay. I did want to point out something that I had sent before we get to you, Bill. I did want to point out something that I'd sent to our group chat from Ian Rappaport. Says the Broncos spent today trying to hire D'Amico Ryans before he recommitted to the Texans. When he agreed to terms with the Texans, they moved and finalized Sean Payton. So what you're telling me is that they were going after D'Amico Ryans and Sean Payton was the backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
Did you also read Adam Schefter's tweet? Because Adam Schefter said that there were no indications that they were that they were going even after D'Amico Ryans, and Kliss even said the same thing. That basically that it was kind of Sean Payton the last few days, and that was their target, and they worked through the compensation. So again, more of the same in terms of what this coaching staff has been bringing, which is no one kind of had an idea of where this thing was going. It was going in a lot of different directions, a lot of fascinating directions. And I think at the end of the day, like it was fresh, you know, I mean, like that's probably the best takeaway I can probably come away with it is I had no problems with the 8 candidates. Really, at the end of the day, I had no problems with the 8 candidates. I just think the process, you know, kind of threw everybody in a frenzy. It kind of made me personally my lack of sleep have a lack of sleep, during this process, But I do think though, if in fact Ian, and I know Ben Albright has mentioned that as well, in terms of the D'Amico Ryans thing as well. If that in fact is true, then that would in turn kind of be interpreted as pretty sloppy ownership if that was the case. And you guys can believe what you want, but I mean, it's just one of those things. Like if that is true, then it's pretty sloppy ownership.
So having been on multiple shows with Bill, I know exactly where he's going. So I'm going to kind of bring up the segue and then let Bill freak out. So
Tee it up.
I am excited about what Payton could bring to the Broncos, but at the same time, I have concerns. I don't like how his tenure with the Saints ended. It really looked like he quit on that team, and that terrifies me. It also came up that Payton was looking for decision making. Like he wanted to be the decision maker when it came to the roster, which means what exactly is George Payton's role moving forward? Also, the Saints were left in a pretty bad cap situation because of decisions that Sean Payton had made while on the Saints. So again, 100% support any Broncos coach. Always will, always have. But I have concerns about Sean Payton, which is why Sean Payton was not my first choice. Bill, to you!
That's what I was saying earlier. I'm not in favor of this, and I understand you're not going to want to go down that first-time head coach again, and that was what D'Amico Ryans would be. Although he's different than the other three, I get that. But the whole Sean Payton thing is why go down that proverbial disaster? Are you setting yourself up again to fail? And this ownership, you don't get $70 million or $70 billion, excuse me, with a B, $70 billion by screwing things up with Walmart or whatever other investments they have. You don't make those mistakes to make that kind of money. What this tells me is they went after a name. They went after a retread, if for lack of a better word. They're going down this road, and that scares me because of what I said earlier. His track record is not the most clean track record in the world by a big stretch. Although I agree with Mike and what he said, yes, I have to support Sean Payton. He's our head coach now. In Broncos country, has to support. But we also have to basically have our head on a swivel. Oh, are we watching out for that? Are we watching out for this? Yeah, that's what we have to look at. And here's the thing. This is what bothers me the most. He said that he had issues with ownership. Well, obviously it was Penner. So did that get ironed out? Does he have his own control of everything the Broncos are doing?
Payton refuted that, by the way.
He did refute it? Okay.
Literally on Twitter. It was his first public tweet alone of 2023 was he actually quote tweeted a report by Mark Maskey who mentioned that report where he mentioned about ownership and questions with ownership. Payton actually quote tweeted that and said that I love the ownership. The interviews have been fantastic. And in doing so, when that's on public record.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, then,
if you have any questions on tweets, Cam has been living on Twitter for the past 2 weeks. No job, no food, no bathroom break, just Twitter. That's all he's been doing.
No, that's good. Okay, just to wrap up what I was saying is I just have questions. I have concerns. I have questions. And my biggest fear is this. Broncos country, Broncos ownership, everybody associated with the Broncos, now because we have Sean Payton, we are going to be expected to win at least 10 to 12 games. If we fall short of that this coming year, then what? And that's the part that scares me is the then what? Does Payton stick it out? Does he all of a sudden get frustrated and have second thoughts? I don't know. I mean, he did to New Orleans, like I said earlier. Why wouldn't he do it to Denver?
Well, let me kind of spin it for both you and Ty then. Who was your candidate?
Originally, I've said it many times, and I know I've gotten chastised in in some of
I
my
swear to
comments.
God,
and
if you
stuff.
say Rosberg, I'm going to smack you.
That's who I wanted.
Oh,
Was
God.
Rosberg. No, only because of the way he handled the last two. I know it was a small sample, guys, and I know that he was never going to get the job, but I just appreciate the way he handled the last two games. And I know interim head coaches don't usually have success after the first couple of games because they're new, and then everybody figures them out because they're like an open book. I get that. Now, if it wasn't Rosberg, then I was thinking about somebody like a Jim Caldwell who's already had experience, or I was thinking of Dan Quinn, but I never had Sean Payton, and I dang sure didn't have Harbaugh. I don't like his attitude one bit. Not one. Oh, there's no way. You know, I'm not one of those kind of guys that thinks you got to beat up somebody upside the head to get your point across. I just don't like that approach. So that I'm glad he was off the table sooner rather than later. But then, like I said, I got to support Sean Payton. He's our head coach. I just have reservations. That's it.
Ty, it's all you.
All right. So my first choice was Dan Quinn, mostly because he has worked with Russell Wilson. And I think he is kind of that balance between he can get the players to work for him, but he also kind of he had a little bit of Hackett on his side, which I'm pretty sure not a lot of people are going to agree with. So he was going to be my first choice. My other two were, I believe it was D'Amico Ryans was number 2 and Jim Caldwell was number 3. So I was mostly looking. D'Amico Ryans was the only first year head coach that I would have been okay with. But like we've gone through this so many years since Gary Kubiak left. The first year head coaches, and yes, granted, I've heard from various other people that just because it hasn't worked for the Broncos doesn't mean it can't continue working, because we've seen what like teams like Sean McVay and other teams have been able to do. So I know for a fact I didn't want a first-year head coach. When Harbaugh and Payton were discussed, I actually dove deep because I knew for a fact that those would be two very quality coaches. Harbaugh, I was skeptical because he had been in the college game for so long. His time with San Francisco towards the end of it was a little rough, if I do say so myself. And then obviously Sean Payton, first off, it was the draft capital. The draft capital, I having to give up another first round pick. And I was actually mentioning this when Cam had talked about draft capital. We've only had one top 64 pick. Well, actually now we'll only have one top 64 pick in the last 2 years. So that's pretty much kind of getting rid of. And yes, I know with the draft, it's a crapshoot, hit or miss with first rounders, second rounders. I would much rather have a first round pick to at least develop someone that could be a starter, especially a tackle or someone on that offensive line that could really help this team out. But I mean, we got Nick Bonito. Hopefully he can do something. But as far as all this is concerned, we're really only going to have 2 top 64 picks in the next 3 years. And that is something that concerns me. Are we going to be able to get the players that we need for Sean Payton to effectively get a winning culture on that field and get those 10 to 12 wins?
Yeah. Well, I think that, when you talk about the draft capital, I think that's what made this a better deal in the long run for also Denver, is because one of my biggest gripes, if we're going to talk about draft capital, was if you're not going to give up a first this year, then is it possible that a first next year was going to be on the table? And especially, as I said earlier, kind of being pro Russell Wilson, if Russ does stink it up, you're talking about that first round, pick in 2024, which very well might actually, end up being a quarterback if Russ doesn't end up panning out. And especially with 2024 being maybe a loaded quarterback class, maybe the Broncos sort of saw that as an opportunity where they didn't want to kind of handcuff themselves, with that. And so thus it ended up becoming, to look at it this way, a Bradley Chubb for Sean Payton trade, if you want to look at it that way. And so I think that, just from the overall vantage point and everything, looking at it, yeah, it's not great when you give up draft capital, and But at the end of the day, like the Saints were never going to get 2 first-round picks. Like they never were. That was just all about leverage. It was all about how can we be able to get the best deal possible. And frankly, when you sort of boils down to like the team that was probably the most worrisome in the whole Peyton sweepstakes was Carolina, and that was in division. And once they hired Frank Reich, it just ended up being kind of like a moot point, as far as like, okay, are they going to try and give it to Arizona? Well, Arizona had the 3rd overall pick this year, and they already have questions of their own with Kyler Murray. And so they probably for darn sure weren't going to be giving up a first-round pick, let alone a top 5 pick. So, I mean, so that's why I kind of, boiled down to, the Denver Broncos and, possibly them being the most logical landing spot for a team. And then you're hearing some really good things from Peyton right now from Jeff Duncan, who's been reporting it on NOLA.com. Talking about ownership, and he really loves the fan base and how it compares pretty favorably to the relationship that he had with the New Orleans ownership. So I think at the end of the day, it was just about fit for Peyton. And I think, really he just sees the Broncos as a really good fit. Plus I like to see Chargers fans weep because I mean, like, I
that's
think
every Sunday.
Well, because I mean, like, think about it. Next year, if they would have fired Brandon Staley, that would have literally been the job that he would have been sought
Thank
after.
goodness they didn't.
And so now we hired Sean Payton, so we can basically say, screw the Chargers fans. We have Payton, and so I mean that at least makes me happy.
So now
you just made my day, Cam. You just made my day.
I just had one little thing real quick before we move on. That way, whichever way, whoever wants to answer this question.
Trying to
point. All right,
on camera. There we go. Right there.
You need to learn how to point.
Shut up, Cam.
All right. So now that we have Sean Payton, my question is, what staff do you think is going to be built? Because that's my other concern is what staff is Sean Payton going to be built around him? Because there were rumors that Vic Fangio was going to run his defense, and we're not sure how the relationship between Fangio and the Broncos were towards the end of that. It seemed like it was really sour, but I'm hearing that maybe it wasn't as sour as a lot of people hope. So I actually really want to know offense coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coach.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go, because D-Rock had asked 2 questions about players. One was our take on the acquisition of Kamara, and then another one is keeping Alex Singleton at linebacker.
I agree.
So that all is going to depend on defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, right? Like, I can almost say for certain that I don't think Fangio would come back. Like,
well, I hope
I don't think the players would play for him. I don't think the front office wants to deal with him anymore. I don't think that's a thing. But then the question is, like, does the defense that we just ran these last couple of years fit with what Peyton's doing? Or is Peyton going to fit the defense to the players? Like, with Ty, like, what kind of coordinators are we getting?
Well, I mean, you wouldn't keep Evero? I mean, why in heaven's name would you let Evero go? He's not going to be a head coach anywhere. I don't think so.
I think at the end of the day,
Fangio has not confirmed with Miami yet, Avatar.
Yeah. I think Mike Kliss even had kind of shot that down as well. By the way, interesting that Kliss would shoot that down. Not to put a tinfoil hat on, but
all the people that are like, Peyton's wearing an orange tie. That means Broncos. Like, stop it.
But I will say, Evero, it's Peyton's call at the end of the day. And you're in a tough spot, with Evero and Vic Fangio, because I mean they do run a little bit of the same scheme. It seemed like maybe it was a little bit more of an advanced scheme under Ejiro Evero. But I mean, if Evero kind of felt butthurt with everything that sort of unfolded with, this season and, still being really close to Nathaniel Hackett, he may not want to stay. But at the end of the day, it's also Payton's call. So like, if he wants to keep, say, a younger version, I've said this before on 5280, it's like if he wants to keep a younger version of, say, that Vic Fangio scheme, then Evero would be a pretty solid choice to keep on, the staff. I know that Dan Rochar has been a name that's been linked as far as maybe the offensive line coach, for the Saints or from the Saints to Denver. And I mentioned how the Saints development for an offensive line has been really, really good. And maybe, as I mentioned too, it's like not to get too much of a pipe dream going on, but I mean, if they're going to be giving Payton all the resources to do whatever he wants with the staff, or even personnel decisions, with obviously the buck stopping with the ownership, not George Payton, but the owner, it's very possible that we aren't just talking about Dan Rochar on the staff, but Mike Munchak and Dan Rochar on the staff. That maybe do they bring Mike Munchak as offensive line coach? And if you look at Rochar's resume, he hasn't just been an offensive line coach. He's been like a running game coordinator, like a running backs coach, tight ends coach. Like he's done various different things. So there's probably an avenue that you can make it work, but it's 100% Payton's call.
Yeah, and I don't know, that bothers me too, because I mean, we've got Evero's a great defensive coordinator, and then you could have Rosberg as the special teams coordinator. I mean, I know, Mike, I see you smiling up there, but it's true. I mean, he was a great defensive coordinator. I mean, special teams coordinator. And if he had all those years, that's the thing that irritates me and bothers me about any new coach. It could have been Ryans. It could have been Caldwell. They're going to bring in their own people. And we haven't seen that work here in the last 6 years, guys. So that's a little scary.
I'm trying to think like Sean Payton had Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator, right? Dennis Allen, Greg Williams.
Yeah.
Greg Williams, there we go. Bring him back. Woo!
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of the problem you do run into when you tip to a coach that you're interviewing, that he needs to keep a certain guy on the staff. I'm for keeping Jerry Rosberg on the staff as a special teams coordinator.
Sure.
And it seemed like from Ian Rappaport and from the stuff that got leaked, that maybe that Rosberg will actually still stay in some capacity. So he did mention that, like,
right.
But when you pigeonhole yourself, as far as that they have to keep these certain guys, or would you recommend hiring these kind of guys? You're kind of handcuffing a coach, especially Sean Payton, who you're going to be probably, signing a massive contract here at some point, with the Broncos once the contract details come out. So I think it's one of those cases where you do have to put all of your cards in, especially with the fact you made the deal with Payton, to saying, bring in, you really do have to bring in your own guys. And I mean, yeah, so because I mean, like, to think about it from my vantage point, like, and I know on social media I've been kind of talking up David Shaw, like, and I only bring up like David Shaw just as far as connecting the dots. Like, David Shaw had been talked up as far as a head coaching position, from Sean Payton's perspective back in 2020, right? So so I think it's possible that like he could be on the staff in some capacity, but doesn't mean that he will. It's just a simple guess from my vantage point.
Yeah. You think he'd come out of college for that?
Well, he only interviewed for one job, right? He only interviewed for one job.
True.
It was Denver, and there's very clearly the Stanford connection, and I think he's had a connection to Sean Payton back with the Philadelphia Eagles. So he could, in essence, the only issue is like it may not be offensive coordinator. It could be some other positional coach, because I mean, like maybe quarterback coach, maybe. It would be on the offensive side of the ball, but I mean,
right.
But again, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket and say that David Shaw is going to be on the staff. It's just a kind of a pipe dream scenario.
That's a good thought.
So
Yeah.
So there's a tweet from January 19th from Ben Albright saying that, obviously Sean Payton's been linked to Vic Fangio, blah, blah, blah. But also has been linked with Joe Lombardi as potential offensive coordinator. So the offensive coordinator of the Chargers before he just got fired, which they now have Kellen Moore, which Bill loves. Bill loves the Chargers.
I don't want an ex-Charger coach on our team. If he sucked on that team, I don't want him on our team.
He sucked on that team.
Come on, man.
Well, at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, like if Payton's an offensive-minded coach, if we hire Joe Lombardi, it's not going to matter. Like, it's going to end up being Peyton's offense still. Like, it's a completely different scenario when you have Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi. We all know Staley's a defensive-minded coach. So, like, in this case, you're talking about, like, Peyton and Lombardi. And, like,
so Peyton would be making the calls, is what you're saying? Making the plays? Calling the plays?
It would still be Peyton's scheme. And then But my question is, like, when you look at Sean Payton's offensive scheme in New Orleans, what he did in New Orleans isn't really going to fit well with what Russ does, right?
No, it will.
Will it will?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, you know, especially when you look at with how he has been able to get a winning record with Taysom Hill at quarterback. You know, he's clearly proven to, you know, do things as far as, you know, make it quarterback friendly. You know, with quarterbacks on the run like a Taysom Hill, or heck, even when Teddy Bridgewater was there. I mean, he definitely he's only had like 4 losing seasons in the time, and back when he did have one of his winning seasons was when he had 3 quarterbacks under center. I mean, so like he's definitely shown the propensity to be quarterback friendly in that. And so, you know, and plus, I mean, he's kind of outlined before, you know, his plan of being able to fix Russell Wilson in the past on Colin Cowherd's show. So, I mean, like, you know, he clearly has a plan in place of how he would want to fix Russell Wilson.
Here comes the return of Teddy Two Gloves. That's what's coming up next.
Yo, could you imagine if, I know it's not going to happen, could you imagine Taysom Hill in a Broncos uniform?
Actually, I could. Now that Payton's in the building, I actually probably could.
Would New Orleans get rid of him, though?
I don't know.
I don't think they can. I mean,
I will. There's only one player that I could actually legitimately see coming to Denver, and like especially now, and it might trigger some Bronco fans due to the position, but Michael Thomas. Like,
I knew it.
I could see Michael Thomas coming to Denver.
Yeah.
Like the moment Sean Payton was signed, was the news broke, everyone's like, Michael Thomas to Denver, Michael Thomas Denver, Michael Thomas Denver. Mike, I can kind of see it.
And D-Rock does bring up a good point. Like, with Sean Payton coming to Denver, what about Alvin Kamara? Like,
his contract is really bad.
Yeah, it is really bad.
Yeah.
And it's probably better to say draft a guy if they want to go high, or draft a running back to get a guy like Gibbs from Alabama, who might be, you know, within that, you know, athletic, you know, running back, you know, type of mold. So, you know, or, you know, if you want to kind of keep Chase Edmonds on the roster, you know, and I know that he'll be on the roster, but I mean, there would be some sort of restructure there, you know. Yeah, so I mean, it's at the end of the day, not to bring the running backs don't matter comment, but it's just like, you know, it's way easy. It's way easier to draft your guy. It's probably easier to draft your guy than you know, than go out and be that aggressive for an Alvin Kamara. That is of course, unless Kamara actually says, trade me to Denver. And then that's when you start kind of. Yeah.
So Taysom Hill's under contract until 25 or 26. What about Chris Strevler? He's like a mini Taysom Hill.
You like that kid. You've always liked that kid.
I do. I like Chris Strevler. He does exactly what Taysom Hill does.
Yeah, but is he big enough to do what he does?
Just bring Tim Tebow back.
There you go.
Yes.
Oh gosh, could you imagine the firestorm that'll happen if Tim Tebow comes back?
I would love it.
Sean Payton with Tim Tebow and Russell Wilson. Good Lord.
Perfect.
Like,
Perfect.
you talk about a team anointed by Jesus. You got Russell Wilson
What's wrong with that?
and Tim Tebow.
And then you got the devil as quarterback. Oh, I didn't say that, did I?
Oh, calm down. Calm down.
Another thing about the Kamara situation is that he still is dealing with that off the field incident too. So we're not sure if when that'll get solved, and if it does get solved, I think I heard like it was going to be sometime over this offseason, but I'm not too sure.
Dude, bring in Jeffries. You got to be kidding me. Trade Simmons? No way.
Why does everybody want to trade Simmons?
I do say
you just lit a fire, dude. You do not trade Simmons.
I do think logically, though, with the Broncos trading assets, it would make sense. I don't think they trade Simmons, but like it's very for instance, like if they bring in Michael Thomas, right? Like if they bring in Michael Thomas, then you're probably looking at a case of maybe Cortland Sutton being on the move.
Yeah.
And so you're probably looking at maybe some players that are probably going to be wanting a restructure.
The other guys.
The other guy.
Other guy.
You gotta hit that one. You gotta hit that one, man.
Oh, that's funny.
The other guy. But no, I mean, they probably will have to recoup it. They probably will have to recoup
the other guy.
Sorry, Cam.
Okay, Kamari, I'm the other guy to you. Okay.
That's funny.
Is it Kamani's name is Scuba Steve?
No, it's not.
That's what his name is. And he's named Scuba Steve because Bill had such a hard time trying to figure out his first name that he just wouldn't say it. So I was like, well, when that situation happened, you just call him Steve. And so that's where Scuba Steve came from.
Oh, my gosh. I cannot
What's
call
his name?
Kamani.
It's right there. It says Ty.
Yeah.
Hey, why are you picking on our regulars again, man?
That's
His
what
official
I do.
name. His official name is not Ty Fly Guy, by the way. Like his name is Ty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ty.
I mean, if you want,
You can find me on Twitter if you want to know
literally
my
right
name
that
is.
handle.
There's Bubba Gump.
Mike has nicknames for all of these
Fangio
guys,
comes
dude.
in as defensive coordinator. I can see Simmons being traded. He didn't like the
No.
way Fangio used him in the D before. A
It's true.
lot of defensive players didn't like Fangio. Like that was one of the
Yeah.
things. See, this is my thing. Like, are you really going to pick a defensive coordinator over like an all-pro safety? Like
No.
the best safety in the league? That's what I don't understand. Why is everybody wanting to trade Simmons?
I
Like
don't get it either.
if you're trying to rebuild a team, you don't trade away the best people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're your core, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I would
Like
not
if you
trade
look
Judy
if you
either.
look at the Broncos roster right now, you have maybe 3 core guys.
Mhm.
You got Simmons, you got Surtain, and you've got Judy. Those are your 3 core guys, right?
Yep.
You build
Judy.
around those 3. You don't trade them away.
Well, and especially
I
if
agree
we're
with
going to
Kamani.
be if we're going to be talking, this is maybe a side part or a side point of that, and I'll probably be crafting an article here soon about it. But if we're going to be talking about the biggest winner of the entire Sean Payton hire for Denver, it's Jerry Jeudy. I would absolutely be buying stock right now if you didn't already with the way that he ended the season, and then now with Sean Payton, we're talking about a guy that had the offense where Michael Thomas was averaging like 15,000 targets a game.
By
I mean,
who?
like-
Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry, Cam, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just saying, like, by who? Who are you going to replace Justin Simmons with?
You can't
No,
because
I-
Caden
nobody
Stearns
else
is taking
as good as him.
Cade
K-Jack
Stearns is
spot.
going to KJ, yeah.
Yeah.
Because K-Jack's not under contract. Do you think he comes back? I mean, I wouldn't mind him coming back, but I don't think he needs to if you got Cade Stearns.
Whoa.
Plus, you got PJ Locke.
Bring up that Jeffrey comment.
So I
I
mean,
kind of agree with Cam though.
That doesn't even make any sense.
That's why I said bring it up.
I have to agree with Cam though because having Sean, if there's one benefit to having a Sean Payton offense, it is if we saw what Jerry Jeudy could do this season, especially the second half. Oh my goodness, him and that Sean Payton offense is going to be insane.
Who's that?
How
Judy?
old
Jerry
do you
Jeudy.
think Simmons is? He's like 27.
he's actually almost 30, but he's not K-Jack old.
Mike,
No,
we're going to
K-Jack is
lose.
like 35. What do you? What?
We're going to lose
I'm gonna start
subscribers.
raging.
We're going to lose subscribers the way you're going, dude.
Well, so I think another one that I think as far as maybe if we're going to look, as far as winners would be D'Artagnan, Greg Dulcich himself. I think that,
Oh,
with,
Yeah.
as far is if you're looking at some of the winners, Dulcich being one of them. So I mean there's just a lot to glean from it. Defensively, it's still kind of an unknown, and we talked about that already. But I mean, it's just like because it all hinges on who's the defensive coordinator. I can't imagine Payne would want to change up the scheme too much. Want to change up the scheme too much, and that's why I think that especially if you're going to be Well, I mean, too, and if George Payton is still to Simmons' comment, if George Payton is still kind of being talked about as far as being a piece within this organization, I can't see Simmons being gone at all, because he's been a guy that has been vocal about Simmons, talking about how he's a foundational piece for this organization. But at the end of the day, he did mention that about Bradley Chubb too, and we were able to get a first out of him and trade and basically have that trade result in Sean Payton. So, I mean, things change, things can change, and so it's certainly possible that maybe Simmons is on the block. I doubt it though. But there are players that you can trade.
Did you watch any Champ Bailey film, like at all?
Shut down Manning. We couldn't pressure him enough for Champ to shut anyone down. What? What the heck was that? Because I remember that interception, Champ Bailey.
I quit.
No,
I don't know.
I was going to say, I just can't for the life of me understand why you would trade away your best safety in the entire league. I mean, why in heaven's name would you do that? And I know they say, we need draft choice, we need draft picks. I don't give a frosty you-know-what. I don't want to trade away our best safety in the league. Why? Makes zero sense. Just to come back to beat our butt or what?
What? I mean,
Eli Apple.
What?
Good God.
I'll pass on Eli Apple. I would rather have Cam Taylor-Britt, a guy that I wanted. Than Eli Apple. He's balling out, by the way.
And listen, the Eagles need to get rid of Cam Jurgens. Trade him to the Broncos. They don't need him. They got Kelsey at center. Give us Cam Jurgens.
I don't know if that'll ever happen, but
Jason Kelsey is going to retire soon, so
maybe.
Probably after the Super Bowl.
That'd be my guess.
If they win.
I had
Kelsey
a good point in my head, and then Jeffrey Bryan angered me, and now I can't.
When you get old, it has a tendency.
Hey,
you're like 2 years younger than I am.
Wait a minute, you said the word old? Come on, man.
I'm not talking about you, Bill. When's the nurse coming by with your tapioca pudding?
Oh, jeez.
Oh my gosh, dude. That was half hour before I got on the show. I'm just kidding.
What I was going to say. I don't remember what I was going to say. So the Broncos don't have a first-round pick. We don't have a second-round pick. Now we don't have a second-round pick for next year. Are we just going straight free agency this year?
Maybe.
And can you you look at the Denver Broncos and the offensive line that we had this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Garrett Bowles is still under contract, probably going to try to redo his contract. Quinn Miners is still under contract, or they're going to re-sign him?
Quinn Miners is still under contract.
Still under contract.
Yeah.
Okay. But everybody else isn't under contract. Like Dalton Reisner's contract is up.
Yeah.
Whoever in God's name we had it right tackle, Billy Turner, I think.
Mm-hmm.
His contract
it was a
is
rotating
right tackle. Graham Glasgow's contract is up.
I don't know if Calvin Anderson's contract is up, but yeah.
Calvin Anderson's contract is up. Like everybody's contract is up except for Miners and Bowles.
Mm-hmm.
So how many running backs are we getting to put at those positions? And can it not be Ezekiel Elliott, please? Like he got pushed back about 10 yards with one.
Yep.
Well, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, I know we did talk about the running back position and the draft. It would be interesting if they do dive into free agency, because the running back class for free agency is tempting, especially for a guy like the Sean Payton offense, to put a guy like Tony Pollard in that offense, with maybe a healthy, Javonte Williams. I mean,
yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you look at Javonte Williams and the injury that he got this last season. Last I heard, he's probably not going to be ready until halfway through next season.
Yep.
Right?
It's possible.
And then what are we going to get? And then what type of running back we got?
So if we have Chase Edmonds under contract, are there any good running backs that are actually going to be available? Like Tony Pollard, do you think that the Cowboys are going to let him go? Plus, he just broke his leg.
Oh,
I
perfect.
mean, it depends. I mean, because with his injury, they might actually end up, having it to be maybe a little bit of a lesser deal, which would fit, not paying for running back at that category. But I mean, it depends. I mean, again, it depends on truly how aggressive the Broncos want to go about it, right? I mean, it's a loaded class. I mean, you have a few pipe dreams in there. You have Josh Jacobs now, who's now clearly become Saquon Barkley being one, Miles Sanders being kind of like a poor man's version of, Saquon. I mean, Devin Singletary, I think, is an interesting name. The running back for the Buffalo Bills. Because the Buffalo Bills have like 15 running backs that they use, so someone's at least got to hit the market.
Niners.
So
like
yeah,
18.
You wouldn't keep Murray?
I would definitely re-sign Murray. I would re-sign Murray in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
and especially with his connections to Sean Payton and the Saints,
Say,
absolutely, I would imagine he's a priority.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely,
multiple times I think too.
If we can get Saquon Barkley, I would love that.
Let's not dream too big, Ty.
Hey, I'm allowed to dream big.
And even Miles Sanders, but at the same time, you look at the Eagles roster. Can they afford Miles Sanders?
Well, the salary cap just went up by 25 or 23 mil.
No,
but also if it
didn't go up 20 mil.
But also, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, who knows if he wants to stay? So I mean, like, or even because of this season, who knows if he wants to stay? And so
Right.
I mean, it's just I don't know. It's just
it's just. I know what the point I was going to bring up. How is it that we get rid of Melvin Gordon because he's fumbling away the season, and this dude might get a ring first?
He hasn't even played. He doesn't deserve a freaking ring. Only just by association. You got to give him an association ring. I mean, seriously, why hasn't played? He fumbles. What?
It's like a participation trophy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, here.
Little miniature pitch. Here you go. That's why I want the Eagles to. I don't want him to win a ring. He doesn't deserve a freaking ring. He just happened to. Huh?
Who?
Melvin Gordon. He does not deserve a ring.
Oh yeah.
I don't want that a bit. But
Saquon wants 20 mil. Okay.
Yeah,
Done.
And done.
That's fine.
It's
Just still delivered.
It's just hard to gauge because like now that you got Sean Payton, it's kind of like when the Broncos signed Peyton Manning. Like it just created this firestorm of free agents that wanted to come to Denver, and especially with the Walmart money. I mean, you have no idea, and with the fact that they wanted to spend big, literally, and they were finally able to spend big and get Sean Payton. It's easy to connect those dots maybe about them wanting to spend big, but you just don't know with it boiling down that do they want to spend big, like logically. One thing too, I want to just circle back on the draft capital stuff though. It's important to remember that if George Payton is in the building, he's a really, really good draft scout. So even if they did give up the draft capital and everything like that, we're talking about maybe one of the best, draft, people in the game. And like he was able to, in his first draft, have Baron Browning, Quinn Miners, Javonte Williams, Caden Stearns. I mean, all of those guys ended up being hits for this team. So it is still conceivable, that George Payton can still hit on those draft picks, even if they weren't, first or second round draft picks.
That's fair.
Right. So what, with Sean Payton in the building, what do you see George Payton's role being going forward? Because we were told that his job was safe.
Mm-hmm.
But now you got Sean Payton in the building who wants roster say. Is he working with Payton or is he replacing Payton?
I would hope he's working with him because I don't want a head coach as a GM as well. I just don't want I just don't want too many responsibilities for a guy who needs to focus on one thing, and that is managing the team. And I know that a lot of people say managing a team includes draft choices and draft picks and all this. Okay, be a part of the system. I don't want you to be the system because that doesn't it doesn't work. Just look around the league when other head coaches have had, total control. After a while, it becomes a collapse because they have nobody else to banter things off of or to get different opinions or different ideas or, hey, let's go in this direction. Let's try that direction. You don't get that that second or third opinion. So no, I don't want that. And if that's what he has, then I'm sorry, guys. I think it's going to be an absolute disaster. Maybe not the first year because it's all new, if that's where he's at, but it'll happen down the road. It always has and always will. And I don't want that with the Broncos.
Didn't that happen when the Broncos had Josh McDaniels as their head coach? He had say in the roster.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Why do you got to bring that up?
Because it's a
that's the point that he's trying to make.
Yes,
but let's not compare Josh McDaniels to Sean Payton. Like,
well, no, not as far as coaching goes, but as far as a trainer. That's the thing.
But I mean, it's still. See, now my night's ruined. We got Sean Payton and McDaniels. But
I'm sorry.
I only brought up Josh McDaniels to bring a point
Cam,
to Bill.
Cam, it's not my fault. Mike asked me to be on the show. Take it up with him.
No, but still, at the end of the day, it's Payton's call. I will say though, I should say Sean Payton. Now we got to clarify things. We got the law firm
Payton
of
Payton.
Yeah. But
the law firm.
It's still Sean's call, because I will say though, it would be hard to get rid of George just because of his expertise in drafting. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I know I've heard Jeff Duncan, guy over, on NOLA, talk about this, and I think he even mentioned it on the DNVR podcast, that there were two guys, at least on the executive side of things, the front office side of things, that he could bring, and that being Ryan Pace and Jeff Ireland. I know Ryan Pace is currently employed. I don't think Jeff Ireland is currently employed, so maybe he brings Ireland in. Again, all of this just unfortunately hinges on Payton's call. And not to beat a dead horse, but it's just sorry, Peter, but I just think that
you should apologize to the Broncos statue on top of their scoreboard.
But anyway, it all hinges on him.
See, Bill, I'm not the only one that's working on getting stuff shut down.
Who got shut down?
Apologizing to PETA. Okay, I did want to bring this up. Will this be the actual year of the Wild Wild West? Well, except for the Raiders, they don't even got a quarterback.
Well, they may end up with.
How do you get rid of
Tom
Derek
Brady.
Carr?
They may end up with Tom Brady. You got the Brady McDaniels connection, man.
Pablo.
I'm serious. It could be. And Mark Davis would jump at that. Vegas gamblers would pay money for that. You don't think so?
It could be in San Fran.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It could be anywhere. But, I mean, maybe that's what the Raiders are banking on.
The biggest thing, and maybe this is why the Raiders need to go all out for Brady, but and I know Shelby Manning has made this point with us in our Put on the Orange chat, but it's just I really don't think the Raiders organization have no idea what firestorm they've created when they outed Derek Carr. And
Why?
so
Ousted?
Ousted Derek Carr. Yeah. But I mean,
why would that be a firestorm?
Devontae Adams wanted Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Derek Carr wanted Devontae Adams.
Okay.
And now you're basically shipping Carr out, who Adams wanted. You are maybe currently shopping Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, which is the rumor.
Ooh.
And
should Denver go after Waller?
They're not going to trade him in division.
Absolutely.
They are not going to trade him in division.
Why not?
They're not going to trade him in division.
What do you mean, why not?
Actually, take it back. Take it back. Josh McDaniels is stupid, so he might actually trade him. So
I just said, one happy thing about McDaniels is now we know there's a trend. Bring him to your team if you want to get rid of your best receiver and your quarterback. Bring McDaniels. If you ever have a problem with your quarterback and your receiver, just hire Josh McDaniels, and within the season, they'll be gone.
Yep.
Oh, my gosh, dude. That is so freaking spot on.
But the point is, though, is that with the Raiders, if they want to salvage things with Devontae Adams, maybe the best thing that you want to do is bring in Brady.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That still doesn't make any sense.
Why wouldn't it make sense?
I get the Josh McDaniels connection, right?
Okay.
But the Raiders are not that close to a Super Bowl.
But it doesn't matter.
Are the Raiders any closer to a Super Bowl than the Bucs? No.
When the wait a minute, wait.
Does Brady really turn the dial that much to get them to a Super Bowl? At this point, no.
What do you mean no? Think about it, Mike. What did he do? What did he do when he went to Tampa Bay? And I know you're going to say, well, Tampa Bay was right on the threshold. All they
right,
needed
but you have
all
to
we
remember,
needed was a quarterback.
But when Brady went to Tampa Bay, he was still playing like Brady. This last season, Brady wasn't playing like Brady. He was still good. He was still good, but he can't carry the team by himself anymore.
Dude,
like that was one of the things with the Patriots is like they were able to get by with not mediocre, low paid players that fit the scheme because they had Tom Brady. He's not at that playing level anymore.
And you don't think that has a lot to do with his divorce? Come on, man. You don't think so for one bit? I sure do. That gets in your head, man. I've been through that. I know it gets in your head. That wasn't
Stop being depressing.
I'm not depressed. I'm just saying that's why he's going to be better next year, no matter where he goes. He's going to be better. And if he goes to a new
now, where's Aaron Rodgers going?
Again, Miami.
Why wouldn't he go to Miami again? Is he going to the Jets?
Miami.
You really think that because they hired Nathaniel Hackett that they're going to go down to
the
Denver Broncos
to the
saga?
Jets.
That we hired Nathaniel Hackett and we were on the Aaron Rodgers saga.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying.
What happened?
He was connected to the Jets before Hackett got there.
Well, why would he go to the Jets?
I think it's going to I think Derek Carr goes to the Jets. If I was going to make a call, I think Carr goes to the Jets.
Now, is Carr still under contract or was his contract up when they cut him?
He's under contract.
Wow. I figured he'd go to the Bucs. If they're losing Brady, you bring in Derek Carr, right? But then you got where's Jimmy G going to go? Because Jimmy G makes sense in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Or
Vegas, he could go back to New England.
Or even Miami.
Yeah, Jimmy G would actually be a good spot for New England. Would be a good spot for him.
Yeah, for Jimmy G. Yeah, but now they've got Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator who worked with Mac Jones.
Well,
that's true too.
This whole offseason is crazy already. I mean, we're not even to the Super Bowl yet.
Technically, we're not really in offseason yet. Well, I mean,
it's okay though. We can finally sleep. We got our head coach.
Isn't Josh Jacobs a free agent too?
Yeah, he is. But he might actually end up getting the tag because I originally, and I think Mike, you and I had a talk about this. I think with the running back class, initially, I thought he was a possibility, but the more the season wore on, Josh Adams kind of turned himself into more of a pipe dream than a possibility anymore.
Mike, real quick, go to the Jeffrey.
That would be a downgrade, wouldn't it?
No, go to Jeffrey Bryan where he says Carr would help develop Wilson. What do you mean develop Wilson?
Wilson.
Wait a minute.
Well,
that doesn't make any sense.
Zach Wilson.
Is what he's talking about.
Okay. Zach Wilson.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Zach Wilson could help Carr develop how to sleep with your mom's friends. Do that.
It's a fun fit though. As far as Carr
fit, I'm not even going there.
If you look at his play style, kind of Carr's playing style, it would be kind of fun to see Zach Wilson learn kind of the ropes of Derek Carr, and especially when you can put him maybe with a coach that is probably best suited for an offensive coordinator role.
I thought he was talking about Russell Wilson. I'm sorry.
Derek Carr in Indy. That's a good one. I didn't think about that one.
Yeah. All right. Where do we think Lamar Jackson's going to end up?
I don't know.
I think he stays with the Ravens.
XFL.
I think another fit for Derek Carr is one that's not being talked about at least, and that's Derek Carr in Carolina.
Oh, that's a good one.
Wow.
So so now here's a bigger question. We sit here talking about Brock Purdy all offseason or all postseason, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now the guy might have to have Tommy John surgery on his elbow.
I know what that feels like.
Lance, is it Jimmy G, or is it Purdy? All three are hurt.
Well, they say that once you've had Tommy John surgery, that you usually come back stronger. I mean, exactly the same or stronger. It happens in baseball.
But how long is
why not?
The recovery is 6 months, though, right?
That's fine. He can come back.
And you've got Lance coming off a broken ankle. You've got Jimmy G coming off a broken
6 months
foot?
is only August or
Is it
July.
foot that he broke?
Yeah.
It's just hard to gauge with there, right? Because I mean, the Shanahan system is, so quarterback friendly. I mean, Bill could be in that offense and he'd actually, operate it.
God.
I
Bill would
mean-
be the yard marker.
But I think that it is such a quarterback friendly system, though. But I will say though, Purdy at least made it interesting, And I it's at least with the conversation. I would imagine it is still in favor of Lance because of the amount that they gave up. Hi, Tyreek. Hope you enjoy Miami. But I think that it's probably one of those situations where it's a little bit quarterback friendly though, and so he's at least made it interesting. And so I would say it's a little bit more in favor of Lance still because of the amount that they gave up for him.
Yeah.
Lamar to Carolina. That's interesting.
Now, does everybody think that Tua should just hang it up and say, "Hey, a career is a career"?
It's certainly possible.
Come back.
It is possible.
And that would open the door, obviously, for the Miami. Somebody go to Miami like
Jimmy
Lamar.
G or Jimmy G.
Jimmy G. Yeah. So I don't know.
Or John Elway.
Yeah. Have you seen him lately? He sure looks old, man.
Well, 60-year-olds can play football.
Hey,
Tom Brady. Might as well just throw somebody else in there.
John Elway is a year younger than me. That's right. Or maybe a year older.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So,
all right. Any closing statements?
Go Broncos. Go Sean Payton.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we got to be behind the guy. He's our coach now. So let's all get behind and let's all hope for the best. And let's get 10 to 12 wins next year.
Pray.
Sweet dear baby Jesus.
If you guys also, this is a little bit old per se, but if you guys want a fun documentary with Sean Payton, The Boys of Fall. It's a documentary that was done a handful of years ago. A lot of coaches were in that. I think Nick Saban was even in that. Sean Payton's in that. Tommy Bowden, I think, was in that. So there's just a lot of coaches, but Sean Payton was in there. So if you guys want a nice, good watching material, Boys of Fall documentary is a good one.
Or the Sean Payton movie. That was a good one too with Kevin James.
Played by Kevin James.
Absolutely fantastic. Now you can get Cam Parker and myself on the 5280 on the network. You can also get Cam, Mainly Broncos. Anywhere you can get audio podcasts, go ahead and download Mainly Broncos. You can get Ty at the Incomplete Podcast. Anywhere you get audio podcasts, you can get Ty on the Incomplete Podcast. Don't worry about Bill. He's on the network as well on Fridays. Make sure you catch all the network shows. We got shows on Monday, the Cluster Puck Podcast. Tuesday, you got the 5280, followed by Sports Nonsense and Whiskey, which is coming up right after this show. And then on Wednesday, we got the Wild Wild West, covers every team in the AFC West. Friday, you got Broncos Breakdown, Bronco Bill. He goes absolutely nuts on those shows, which is awesome. Make sure you check that out. And the neighborhood will continue with the Avalanche season. We'll keep doing one or two.
Next one is February 7th.
1 or 2 games a week, probably one with work schedules, but going from there. With that, we want to wish everybody a wonderful night. We finally have a coach. Go Broncos. Let's ride. Bye-bye.
Get off my lawn!